This is Matt from Church Realty, and I'm here today with Kevin Boyd from Legacy Church. Now, you all worked with Church Realty in recent years on a pretty amazing property transition. Why don't you tell us that story?
Yeah, I approached John Muzyka in 2017. I had come to a church in Plano, Texas, North Dallas, in 2013 as the lead pastor here, and came into a great church, really great people, good history, mission involvement, but was in an era where we had a massive building and old debt sitting on that building. And when I first arrived and looked at the books, I went, I'm concerned that our budget doesn't align with our values, who we really aspire to be as a church. And so we began a conversation about what kinds of things could we do to put more of our pot into mission and ministry and less into overhead, into facilities, into operations and things like that. And so we, for a couple of years, looked around, thought about different things. And we came to a certain point where I realized I didn't want to, very slowly, incrementally over the next 10 or 15 years, write our budget to our value system. I wanted to do the big thing. I wanted to do the big swing and say, let's get right now in the place that, we want to be as a church. And it took some time with our church to kind of guide them through some vision dinners and, membership meetings to kind of prepare the way, lead them in a direction, and got to a point where we said, hey, would this building matter that much if it meant we could make a dramatic shift in how we use the funds? And they leaned in. So I called John and said, hey, I have a building in mind and I'm approaching them. What I need is someone with experience. I need someone who can speak language and who can bring two people to a table and just help us navigate what I think would be a massive kingdom win and a win for two churches. And so we reached out to a church in town just a couple of miles away. I knew the pastor, had spent time praying with him, collaborating here and there, and said, hey, I want to buy your building. And no setup or anything on that call, just, hey, I'm calling today because I want to buy your building and I want you to buy my building from me. And he goes, what? And I said, well, the reason is because we want to dramatically change how we use funds. And I think you need to stretch out a little bit. I think you're cramped where you are. So I'm wanting to right size our facility for our mission and vision. And I think that we could have a great partnership in this. And so within an hour, that pastor and his elders were in my office and we were praying. And within the next couple of weeks, John was at the table, just helping us navigate the questions that all of us would have as we begin to make those arrangements.
That is fantastic. You said your budget wasn't aligning with your sense of mission at the church. What were those percentages?
So this church made a major shift before I was here, a decade before I was here, to really say we're a mission center, not just simply a church in a community, but we are where we make missionaries. And so very high value vision for local global mission.
Gotcha.
But a budget that was only about 17% of the budget was devoted to mission and ministry.
That's not very high.
No. And at the time, that would flex between 14 and 17%. And operations, which would include everything from facility and overhead and debt management and things like that, mortgage management, set somewhere between 36 to 42%. And so that did not feel like an alignment in our core identity and values, who we aspire to be on our best day. Really, the thing we set in front of the church was, what if we could just reverse those two numbers? What if we could take that 14 to 17% and apply that to overhead and to facility management and things of that nature? And then what if we actually had somewhere around 40% of our budget clearly designated to mission and ministry, to transformation, to gospel work, kingdom work?
You know what I love about this story, so many times when we're talking about a property transition, we're looking at a church that maybe wants to grow numerically and is putting themselves in that position. But yours is different from that. You're the smaller church. You negotiated a building to get a larger church in a right space so that you all could become right-sized. Am I describing that right?
Yeah, that's right. We were in a 76,000 square foot facility. and we moved into a 35,000 square foot facility. We we are the church, I think, much closer to the church that we hope to be today than we were before because of this move.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about what that looks like now. What are your mission and ministry percentages of your budget today?
Yeah, so right where we hoped we would be. In the current fiscal year, our mission and ministry budget's at 40%, which is right
It's incredible.
in the
Yeah.
window. And that was year one, that went from 17 to 28, 31%, and then has steadily just increased over the years, 34%, 38%, and now at 40.
So that's over a 20% increase in
Yes.
missions budget. I mean, that's phenomenal. So you described the church before as you're kind of a no church. You kept having to say no to things because you were restricted by this building that was just taking up so much of your overhead. What are you able to say yes to now?
I mean, it feels like everything. So we currently have mission partners in Quebec, a church plant that started about 12 years ago. That's now 5 sites. When they get that first building, we're able to come in as major partners and give a large financial contribution to help the renovation of that building happen, and send teams to go and work on that. We have partners in Uganda. We're now hosting 2 pastors' conferences with about 700 pastors a year, and have dental and medical missions there, where last year we saw about 1,000 patients in 7 days, which is unreal, and the kind of thing that we couldn't have ever really dreamed of before. We have partners in Spain, our newest partnership. We've got a team leaving in 2 weeks, and it'll be our first team trip there. We have partners in Mexico, where we're doing work year after year, all things we weren't doing prior to this transition. In 2025, sent around 82 people on short-term mission trips, global and domestic. And we're a church of about 450 people. And so that's a dramatic turn for us.
You all leased a space to a church plant for a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah, we have. For most of the time that I've been at Legacy, we've always kept availability for a church plant to meet. And one of the more recent ones is a beautiful international church that speaks multiple languages. And we did, for a year, charge them rent, but we did not tell them that that rent was being set aside to regift back to them for the day that they moved out. And that's the kind of thing that in our old building, we would rent and to a church plant or some other group, and then use that to help cover the cost of the facility, because that thing was eating our lunch and eating away our ministry.
Okay, very nuts and bolts question about some of the cash that was left over from the property transition, the swap, the sale. So you invested some of that. Tell us about how you chose to invest that and what that's being used for now.
So we took $3.5 million out of the Realty deal, and that $3.5 million, first thing we did is we gave a tithe. We gave a 10% to our mission partners, and then we paid off just under $1 million in debt. I think by the time business was concluded, we had about 980 something thousand in mortgage debt that we just got to sweep away and celebrate. Which left us at that point with a couple million to work with, and we invested in a ladder bond where we have between 1 to 3 bonds maturing every month, and we invested about 1.8, almost 1.8 million in ladder bonds. And those fluctuate. Some of them are earning 2%, some of them are earning 11%. But generally speaking, I get an average of about 6 to 7% return on that investment. And it's pretty liquid, because every month when I have something mature, I pull the interest income, I set it in a money market, I reinvest the principal. And that allows me to really keep capital improvements, furnitures, fixtures, equipment off of my operations budget, off of my ministry budget. Right now, the last probably 3 years, I'm earning between 60 to 65, even 70,000, almost 70,000 in interest income from that ladder bond, which last year we had a 55-ton AC unit go out on the roof. And that's the kind of thing in history that would be a panic button moment. Oh my goodness, do we have reserves for this, or do we have to go asking for this? But we just go, oh, well, we're prepared for that. In 21, there was a massive freeze and flood in our area. We had a pipe burst. We had a building flood. It's the kind of moment where even our deductible was well over $100,000. And we're going, in past, this would have broken us. We would have freeze on spending. We would have had to go into the church body and have the depressing conversation. I need you to give to fix the things that are broken. But instead, we were prepared for it, and we just wrote the check, and we kept aggressively moving towards mission. So that ladder bond has given us a capital expenditure budget that sits on top of our annual giving.
There are two thriving churches. The gospel is being spread around the world. You are meeting community needs, and it's because Legacy Church chose to right size and maximize their impact for the kingdom of God. What advice would you have to pastors facing similar situations?
Stories are powerful. I just tell them our story, and I would tell them 1,000 patients in medical clinics in Uganda last year, and 700 plus pastors in pastoral conferences, 150 Bibles in a native tongue delivered to pastors who were preaching from only the 4 Gospels and didn't have a complete Bible. 200 thermometers given to churches in Uganda who the government would not allow to open after pandemic until they had thermometers that they couldn't afford. I would tell them a church that had baptized 1,000 people but couldn't afford to move into a building. I would tell them these stories and say, these are the reasons that I couldn't have anticipated that this was the right move. But after the fact, I can look back and go, none of these things would have been, God would have done the things, but it wouldn't have been a part of our story had we not made the move we did.